for that. I want to thank all of you for that. And I also want you to realize that on the agenda, we put time for public comment. We used to do that all the time. It was actually in our bylaws, we have it. And then when things got so busy and so crazy and that we took it off. And I think we put it back on as part of a commitment of this new year that we need to have set aside time just to hear from the community. And we need to get practiced and get into the habit of actually having some discussion amongst ourselves and not just responding to things that are happening around us. So with that, Detective Curdy.
Detective Oliver.
Detective Oliver, I'm sorry.
I know I'm not Curdy, and I apologize for that.
No, we don't need it. Detective Oliver worked with us when Detective Curdy was in his motorcycle accident about a year ago, right?
Correct.
And actually, you helped us for several months in that. So he has now been assigned back to us as part of the new configuration. And we'll turn it over to you so you can talk about what these changes mean and also, help us understand all the other things that are going on and how that impacts you.
Okay, and I just caught a glimpse of my video and it's pretty creepy. So I'm gonna stop my video and just do the straight chat. So that if, it was kind of scary looking.
Well, tell them where you're at, in case everybody doesn't know.
I'm actually sitting in my car and it's not in a really secure location. So I'm not gonna put my light on. Next time I will actually be in a little bit more safe environment to turn my light on and so you can see what's going on as well. Just a quick introduction. Since the change at the department, I have taken over the District 1 from Detective Curdy, and Detective Curdy wanted me to tell you all hi and thank you. He has moved to patrol. He's on an East Side Patrol day shift. So that's where he's at right now. So I'm still kind of getting used to these new boundaries as far as what's what up in District 1. I've been the District 2 liaison for a number of years. So I've been able to help out Detective Curdy whenever he's needed help in one. And most of my patrol, almost 90% of the patrol time that I spent in patrol was up in Rose Park. So I'm pretty familiar with the Rose Park area. That's the whole District 1 area. So it might just take me a little bit to focus in on different jurisdictions as far as where the boundaries are for each community council though. And for that, I apologize. Are there any questions and concerns before I just go through some quick stats? Nope. All right. So the current stats that we have, or the statistics that we have, are for the whole month of December. And the thing that's concerning in District 1 is the number of burglaries has gone up in District 1. So has vehicle theft, and that's gone up a lot. So, larceny and theft has gone up a lot. December of 2019, in District 1, where there were 43 total. This year, there's 121 larcenies that occurred in District 1. That's kind of concerning to us, and we're trying to find locations and who, if there's one person involved or we're trying to find some different things, links there. Another thing that's concerning is our motor vehicle thefts in District 1. That rose by 24 just in the month of December. Now, granted, our numbers have gone up, crime numbers have gone up citywide, and that's a concern, but focused on District 1 itself, we always see kind of an influx of stolen vehicles when it gets cold because people like to warm them up, and that's when their cars get stolen. Majority of them are with keys in the vehicle because of warm-ups. So as long as it's cold, I don't recommend warming cars up and leaving the keys in there, or just warm it up, and then lock your car and then go back inside, but don't leave the keys in the car as you're warming up. That's just a little bit of advice, and where we're seeing most of the numbers. One thing that
we do have a non-idling ordinance as well, so
that's
it is
true.
appreciated. Yep.
Both sides. Thank you. And just an interesting thing that came up across this is they do a monthly summary of how much drugs were seized in each district. District 1 had a total of 45,632 doses of narcotics taken off the street. That comes out to about $281,000 worth of drugs just in District 1. That's pretty impressive, just in the fact that we were able to be proactive enough to get that off the street. Majority of that was heroin and the illegal marijuana that wasn't, of course, for medicinal purposes. And then meth was pretty high too, with $1,700 worth of meth taken off the street in December. That's really the numbers that I have for you right now. And as we move along, if there's certain numbers or certain things that you'd like me to report on or get to you, I'm going to leave my email and my phone number in the chat so that you can give me a call anytime. So are there any questions on that? All right, I will leave this. If I can figure out how to do, it might just come to you, Allison. I'm not sure how to change that. So
That's okay. I can get it into the chat for everyone.
okay,
Detective
thank you.
Oliver, before we lose you, one last thing.
Sure.
Could you tell us what, if any, what the police department is doing in anticipation of possible demonstrations here in the capital city?
Correct. Yes, we are. It's a mandatory work day for our whole department. So we are teaming up with the Highway Patrol and any other agency, and we are just going to be on standby. But we are definitely aware of any threats that could be out there, and we are standing up for it.
And is that for 4 days before the inauguration or just inauguration day?
I know it's for the day before and day after, I believe, and inauguration day. So at least 3 days. I'm not sure exactly. We haven't gotten the warning order or the order for us yet, but I know it's for the 3 days, a day before and day after inauguration day.
Any other questions for the detective? Thank you. Josh, you there?
Josh is here.
I am here. Is it my turn?
Yep.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Raboyo. I'm from the mayor's office. I'm the community liaison for District 1 and 2. And I want to thank Dorothy for getting us started that way. I think that's appropriate. I think I'd say Happy New Year. It feels like that was a while ago that we entered the year. And interesting thing too, I noticed it seems every Wednesday there's something that happens that's like a big event. Last week and today, and inauguration, I believe, is on a Wednesday also. So funny coincidence there. I don't know what that means. Anyway, so Detective Oliver is great. I know you've worked with him before, and I'm looking forward to continue working with him as he adds District 1. And I just was going to share a link. If Allison, you can share it into the rest of the chat. Hold on a sec. This is the 2021. This was unveiled last week at a press conference by the mayor and by Chief Mike Brown regarding the increase in crime that we've seen throughout the city, and a plan to address that and to also address the issues that many residents and throughout the city have been dealing with regarding police response times and just kind of the workload in that regard. And so that's an 8-page document there. So I'm not going to go over it right now, but you please feel free to take a look at that and direct any questions on that to me in the mayor's office or Detective Oliver as well. Also, just to reiterate what he was saying about the question about the potential of protests and the related to the inauguration. I'm just going to read the statement that was issued by Chief and by Mayor Mendenhall regarding it. So it says, we are aware of plans to protest at the state capitol and elsewhere in the coming weeks. We are working diligently with local, state, and federal agencies on a safety plan. We will not allow violence from any group and are committed to our duty to keep the peace. So yeah, that is a plan that's being worked on very closely at the state level and the county and city level to make sure that that is taken care of and that nothing gets out of hand related to the inauguration. In just a couple other points, I guess, as we're on the topic of policing, the Salt Lake City Racial Equity and Policing Commission, as you know, is a commission that's working to review the current policies, culture, and budget of the police department, and will later this year make recommendations for changes that they believe need to be made. And a lot of that is based on community input. And there is a website now that you can visit to get more information about the commission and its meetings and how to give your input. And there is that link right there. It's just SLC Rep Commission, or SLCREP Commission.com. And you'll notice on there that there is a public listening session coming up on the 20th, next Wednesday at 5 p.m. The mayor, Chief Brown, and members of the city council will be involved in that. And members of the public are invited to join in the conversation. And you can find more information on that website if you're, and then also just more contact info if you're interested in giving other input aside from that meeting to the commission. And I think the only other item I had was just to share information about our program that we're running from the city together with community groups called Raise Up SLC, which is assisting residents and families who didn't qualify or couldn't qualify for federal stimulus money due to their immigration status and personal situations, giving them $500 cash cards to people that live within Salt Lake City that fall in that category. And so those are being currently distributed, and people are reaching out to our office and to the community organizations, which include Comunidades Unidas and Utah Community Action, and another one as well, which is, the name is escaping me. But if you would like to donate, they're still raising money to help raise money for those funds, for those $500 cash cards. And the website for that is raiseupslc.com. And I'll just put it up in there too. Thank you, Allison, for sharing that. It's the last one, I think. Make sure I spelled that right. Yep, that's the correct one. Okay. So yeah, if you're interested in making donation, that's the website for it. And that is all on my side. I'd be happy to take any questions regarding anything I spoke about or anything else.
Steve, did you have a question? Sorry, I see you're muted. I saw you raise your hand. There you go.
That's a site to say how to give donations. Is there a website to say how to tap into the dough?
That one is, you meaning to access the money?
Yes, tap into the dough.
Yeah, so we have been directing people to the different community organizations. I'm pulling up the list here. So Communities United, or Comunidades Unidas, that work primarily with the Spanish-speaking population. Also Utah Community Action, So all of this is the distribution of it is being run by outside organizations that are on the ground that work with the community. And so people that call our office asking how to access the money, we do direct them to one of those organizations.
I mean, I guess I'm really implying that I'm a lot less likely to donate if I don't know how the funds are distributed. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, I understand that.
If I think
The
it's a
city is
black
working.
hole, if I think it's a black hole, or I think it's not done fairly or whatever, if you don't put up something on that site on how it's distributed, I think you got a lot less chance of getting money donated.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Here, let me share with all of you the press release on this that has the whole bit of information on that. And that's the last link, Allison. Thank you. There is that link. And as far as the process that the community-based organizations are using to distribute that, I know that there's other people in our office that have worked closely with them. I haven't personally been involved in that. But I'd be happy to get more information as far as anything you'd be interested in knowing about how it's being managed. Yeah, I'd say just feel free to reach out to me. I'll go ahead and put my contact info in the chat box, and along with my phone number and email address. And that just goes for anything that might have a question about and need to reach out to me at a later time.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
For those cash cards, is it per household or per adult, or how does that
Yeah, they're for households.
household?
It could be for they could be for individual residents, theoretically, but due to the demand that I'm hearing that a lot of the community-based organizations are hearing, most of these are families that have mixed immigration statuses within them, and that for various reasons weren't able to qualify for earlier federal COVID-19 aid, and so that's the priority for this money.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
So Josh, Jessica, were you asking whether a household would be eligible to receive funding for more than one person?
Yeah, I was just wondering with the $500, is that $500 per household or per individual or per adult?
Yeah, it's per household. Yeah, at this time it's per household. Yeah, they're just trying to get as many residents as possible, any help that they can get, and filling in the gaps and anything that they may not have been able to get from the government in other ways. And so, yeah, I know if $500 is not gonna, for a larger family is not gonna be all they need. They need a lot more than that, but it's at least one small part that the city has decided to get involved with to at least help some residents.
Yeah, that's really nice.
This is Kwele. I remember your first day as the community liaison, Josh. And it's good to see that you're still, our liaison. You're doing a good job. It's good to have that. I remember when this program started, and so what you're doing is really important. And yeah, I just kind of want to reaffirm people to connect with you, right, about all the things that are happening. And then, the pandemic doesn't allow you to be physically here in Rose Park or Westpointe when we meet, but just a nice nudge for you to, at some point, if you're interested, you should move to Salt Lake or Rose Park, be part of the community. But what you're doing is a really important job for our community that hasn't happened, and everyone and anyone that has suggestions for how the city can help us. Josh is the person with specific community resources.
Yeah, thank you, Harley, and congrats on your position now in the school board, and thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me. That's my contact information in there. If you have any questions regarding anything that the mayor's office that can help you with, or you just don't know where to go within the city, that you think that you need help from the city and not sure which department to go to, yeah, please feel free to reach out to me, and be happy to help.
Thank you, Josh. Councilman Rogers, are you there?
Yep, I'm here, Dorothy.
Okay. So again, congratulations to you. And what can you tell us?
Oh, well, there's lots to tell. We have a legislative session coming up, so that's really a hot topic right now for the city council, is making sure that we know which bills are coming up, making sure that those bills are being tracked. And we're working hand in glove with the administration and lobbyists to make sure we understand what's going on. But every year it just seems like the state likes to come and talk to us about water rights and figuring out ways that they can overcome those water rights. And always questions about the airport, always questions, of course, about inland port, always questions about those things. So as a city council, we always have to make sure that we're aware of what's going on. If the whether tax issues are being brought up or changed for financial reasons. So, we try to use our budget as prudently as possible. And sometimes the state, we know that, whether they know it or not, sometimes there's a little trip up in working with them on some of these bills. So we have a really strong team moving forward with this. I'm excited about it. I feel like this is the first time in several years that we've actually have a team ready to go, and that we are really, really ready to work hand in glove and making sure that Salt Lake City is protected. So it really is a big deal, and the local input is important. So Dorothy is always involved in the legislative session. I know that a lot of other community council members are as well, but we always need to stay connected, and that's why I'll continue to send out emails to Dorothy, and Dorothy will, I'm sure, send those out to the community so that you can make calls to our elected officials and understand, what bills might be affecting our areas. I mean, just like last year, we had a annexation bill that came up, and that was one that would have affected Salt Lake City. So we went up and were effective in making sure that that bill didn't get through. So there's just lots of things that are, these 45 days, it's really fast and furious. And when you think it should be what Salt Lake City does, we work over a 12-month period, and these guys are in there for 45 days trying to comb through their budget and make an appropriation. So it's a tough deal for them as well. I don't envy them for 45 days. So one thing I really wanted to talk about, though, that affects our community, both with those that are experiencing homelessness as well as those that in the communities surrounding those that are affected by it, is that we had a need for an emergency homeless overflow shelter, that being because there are more people experiencing homelessness, right? One thing that we found out, believe it or not, is that a lot of people didn't want to go and use the resource centers because they didn't want to split up with their significant other, their girlfriend or their boyfriend, or their partner. So, and that's something that we found out, that these resource centers, they're being filled, but some of the people that could use those resources aren't using it because they didn't want to be separated. So we funded and approved an emergency overflow on North Temple, the old Airport Inn there, for 100, and I believe 26 beds. Maybe it's 146. It's in that range, but it's filled. It's already filled, and those are from people that that weren't camping, that actually are using these resources and not being divided up. So this is another thing that we need to keep on top of with our elected officials at the state, because these are appropriations that are sent to the state, to the county, to make sure that these services are rendered. So there's a lot going on, and it's a lot to be filled in with. So hopefully, if there are questions, I'm more than willing to answer, but those are really the hot topics right now. Is I just wanted to inform everybody of the overflow shelter for the winter. It's winter only. It's only for this winter until the, just escaped my mind. Used to be the road home, but it's now the group that does the homeless issues, and I can't remember it, of course. But anyway, they need to come up with a plan so that we can talk about moving forward with an overflow shelter. And it's not just Salt Lake City's problem, it really isn't. It's the state's problem. It's the entire state that needs to look at it as this issue. And Salt Lake City had been carrying the load for a long time with the county, and thank goodness the state has been appropriating money for the resource centers, as well as for things that we need to do in cleanups and stuff like that. So a lot to it. I'm sorry, but we'll go to questions if there are any.
I have a question. With the overflow shelter until when? You said the end of winter. when do you think that would be? Like as far as what month?
I want to say it's April, but I can double check and I'll send that to you.
And is
I'll
it
send
really,
that to Dorothy for questions and answers, and we can put that on the webpage, I believe.
and is it already to full capacity?
It was filled as of, I got a report from the mayor today that it is being filled at completely.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Does that mean is there a waiting list?
You know, that's another question, Dorothy. I don't know, but the rooms that we have contracted with in that hotel are being used to full capacity every night. And that could be through voucher programs, you know, saying, so it's not just an overnight, it could be a week at a time, I believe, in helping people through this time.
So I don't know how many, I went by the new homeless shelter, or by what was the airport inn on that, which is in a pretty isolated area on the end of a street. You know, I mean, I can't imagine that it's a great place for a hotel.
No, I think at the time before the International Center was built with the hotel, the airport hotels over there, I think it might have been a more popular hotel, and they use a lot of it now for destinations too. I know that you see a lot of tour buses that pull up there and use it at that time, but I think that's why it was available. It was one of the only things that, you know, besides creating a temporary ordinance for them to use that, it's the only building that was really available that didn't need certain, you know, temporary evaluations or going through with the fire department to see if they, you know, it needed sprinklering. I mean, there were a whole other slew of buildings that they looked at for this emergency one, and this is the path of least resistance. And for me, you know, hearing that families were being, you know, wouldn't go and use services, that's just not something that can happen to have people out in the cold. So.
Is there any possibility that the city might look at using that building in the future beyond April? Maybe not as an emergency shelter, but I mean, it's not. You all ought to go out and just kind of just check it out. It's in our, you know, but it's not a great place for a hotel.
Yeah, and I don't think the impacts are. I mean, there's some, you know, the apartments there at the end of, but. The track station is there to get people to the services, you know, downtown that they need, or, you know, for that. So I feel like it's probably the best case scenario for, you know, having an overflow shelter in our area, because it is kind of isolated, right? It's the impact that people would feel. There wasn't a lot of backlash really, because I think people felt like there was no real impact for surrounding neighborhoods, right?
Exactly. Any other questions for the councilman? So we may have you talk a little bit when we talk about the legislature, okay?
Yeah, I'll be here, Dorothy, and with Inland Port too, you know, to talk about.
Yeah, I think that, because I think that's a better place for you to be talking about.
Yep.
So with that, Joel, I think you've been in office for all of a week, but it seems like you've been busy.
Yes, I have been in office for only 8 days. But the first meeting, you know, on Tuesday lasted 7 hours, which is, you know, it was a great meeting. I'm sure lots of people want to hear a lot about lots of stuff, but for me, just general update. First of all, there's new school board members. Just a review of what the school board is. They make policy and oversee the school district. Specifically here, it's a Salt Lake School District, which is the same boundaries as the city, which is nice. I represent Precinct 1, which is almost the same as the City Council District 1, I think. Just it's a little different, just not exactly the same, but it's almost the same. And we have 6 elementary schools in our area, right? And we have 1 middle school, Northwest Middle School, which is in our Westpointe here. And also Slicksy, which is the science school. And that's all the schools we have in our precinct, or what I represent. And of course, West High School is not in our precinct, but all of our students go, when they go to high school, they go there, right? So that's like what I represent. I have the most students all the student body in my precinct is the most compared to other student precincts, which is no surprise because of how many schools we have. We have the most schools in general in my precinct. But it's going to be good because out of the 7 board members, this is the first time we also have a majority of people of color on the board, right? Which is very unique, and I think it's a good celebration of Salt Lake City and our communities, having new voices and having different perspectives, right? Glendale has Jenny Sika, who is Polynesian. I'm Latino, right? Mexican American immigrant. And then Mohammed represents, he's a new school board member. He represents kind of like downtown by the Liberty Park area, who is from Morocco. But anyways, we have a lot of decisions we're making. I think I'm gonna say like 2 big things happening right now. There's always things happening, but the biggest one that people are always emailing me about is about going in person for secondary schools, right? Middle school and high schools. The board voted to move forward to have options for parents and students who have in-person learning once teachers are vaccinated, which I think is pragmatic and logical since the vaccines are being given now, but also we didn't put a date because we didn't know when the vaccines would be given. But now we kind of know that there's going to be, our school district was given 800 vaccines this week, and then like 300 next week. But we're prioritizing people based on age. So those that were like 60 years old and up got vaccine this week, and then little by little we'll get more. But that's happening, which is good, but it's an option. So if parents or students don't want to go in person, they don't need to, But the only thing that we're kind of requiring is teachers, because if we're providing the option, teachers have to go in person. That's why we want them to get vaccinated. So that's a secondary, middle school, and high school. The elementary schools, however, that was voted on before I was on the board. That they're going in person, I think in 2 weeks, or let's see, the 25th, I think, of January. Let me see here. Yeah, the 25th of January, which is in 2 weeks. That was voted on. Some people have lots of concerns because the teachers are going in without the vaccines, but we cannot change the vote. That was kind of clear on Tuesday last week that we cannot change that vote. But the principals are proposing plans for different ways to kind of do their best with the elementary school level stuff. That's the remote learning and in-person learning things that are happening, which next week will be the next school board meeting again, which we will just kind of finalize that secondary plan, and maybe dates or stuff. We'll see what's proposed by the superintendent. The next really important thing that all of you should be involved in is our superintendent search. So we are looking for a new superintendent, and we want the community feedback on what qualities and things we should be looking at in this superintendent search. And on our website, I think I'll look for that but I'll post it on here so to give it to Allison. But we have a timeline. The deadline for people to apply for the superintendent search or superintendency is on Monday. So it's coming up real quick. But then from there, there's like an infographic I made, and it's on our website. It shows like where people can give input. This last Saturday was an open forum focus group for people to give feedback, but no one showed up, which was sad. So there's a couple. Some are just for parents, some are just open, some are for students. It's all over. But what the timeline is on there, it goes pretty fast, just like most things. Once we close it, we'll go through all the applications, which is going to take us a long time to go through. But we're going to narrow it down to the first round to do interviews. And then once we narrow those down with the interviews, we're going to do some town halls potentially, so that virtually, right? Everything's virtual. And all of this will be in the infographic and updated once we kind of know more details. And then once we know the finalists, who there might be 3 or 2, those will be public for everybody, so everybody can see those. And then those are the people that we might be doing town halls with, so the community can directly ask questions to those candidates. But then we as a school board do the final interviews, and then we choose, right? We make the decision. But we want to listen to the input of all of what you're giving. And we're using a consulting firm to help do that so that they can give us digestible information of what the community is giving feedback on. So that's the process. That's very important. And let me phrase it this way. I have good ideas, right? Other school board members have good ideas. You have good ideas. But in the end, it's the superintendent that executes all the ideas. And so that's why our superintendent search is so important, because whoever we choose, it has a lot of responsibility and power for us to move forward all of the good ideas we have. But once we choose that person in late February or March, they will not start until July, right? Just kind of like the school year, how that kind of works. So that's the timeline. Those are the two big things. This Friday and Saturday, the school board will be having a retreat, many-hour retreats, which is very important because I think everybody really wants to see the school board have unity, just like every level of government. But the more unity we have as a school board, since there's only 7 of us, of like where we want to go for this as a school board, and also what we would like to see in the superintendent, right? Having this retreat before the superintendent search is going to help us, right? And it's also important to have this retreat because we build relationships, just like you know, James Rogers and other elected officials. These people you work with a lot. The more authentic and trusted relationships you have with these colleagues that are lawmakers, the better you can do to help with what the community needs are, and really focusing on that and not anything else outside of those responsibilities we have. So that's all happening. You know, I'm still getting to learn how to digest a lot of emails every day, but that's something that I'll be learning, and I'm super excited to be your school board member. This is a 4-year term, so I have a good amount of years left in this first term. And I am here with any questions or comments that people might have.
Thank you so much. Let's go right on to Nathan Peterson at Intermountain Healthcare, so that we then we'll follow up with the legislative preview. Nathan?
Yes. Thank you, Dorothy, and everybody here. Appreciate just spending a few minutes with you to kind of share something that Intermountain's hoping to involve the community for some of the decision making that we have going on, and to kind of set the stage. Yeah, thank you for sharing that document. To set the stage, so Intermountain Healthcare, we've operated the Rose Park Clinic, which is inside Rose Park Elementary School, right? And the North Temple Clinic, which is on North Temple and 800 West. We've owned and operated those clinics, wow, for probably about 13 to 15 years or so, give or take. And we've been very happy to do so. With COVID and some other factors impacting us, we're at a juncture where we may need to make some decisions regarding those clinics. Some ideas have been brought up, like, okay, do we close them? Do we shift to something like telehealth? Do we modify the schedule of the clinics? Those sorts of things. No formal decisions have been made. But as the conversations started gaining steam, we took a step back and said, hey, we need to talk to those who live in these communities and are accessing these clinics. So that's why I've been reached out to James, Councilmember James, and appreciate that, and Dorothy and others with community councils and different coalitions, so just trying to get a broad perspective for how people feel about these clinics. Because granted, if everybody can access healthcare however they want, that's always good. And we know there are a couple other primary care clinics in Rose Park, specifically the Ratcliffe Community Health Center on 1000 North, and then the state has their clinic over on 1950 West, so which is great for access to healthcare. But for Intermountain, we really wanted to collect feedback. So on this slide that's displaying right now, I am providing my email. We probably won't have time to go too deep here, right? But I would love if any of you could reach out to me via email and just provide some thoughts. These 3 questions are just a starting point. But if you have other thoughts, hey, Nathan, could we look at these issues, these matters? Definitely happy to just make it open-ended. And I understand that there's an extra step here, right, to be able to ask you to send me an email or whatever the case may be in that regard, but would really appreciate it. I also wanted to bring up that I am meeting with James Yapias with the Salt Lake City School District, right? He and I actually communicate on a regular basis, multiple times a week. Since obviously the Rose Park Clinic is there inside Rose Park Elementary, and then we have another clinic at Liberty, which is just south of downtown. So that's a big reason why we know James well. But we have actually proposed to James a telehealth model. This is aside from the Rose Park assessment. And they haven't given us a final decision yet, but we are hopeful that the school district will be open to having Intermountain provide, for the lack of a better word, a telehealth unit. And it's basically like a tablet with medical equipment, and it can fit onto a small desk, and students who are ill or need attention can go to the health or the school nurse's office and connect to a school nurse within the school district, and that school district nurse can be wherever she or he needs to be. So it's good telehealth, and Intermountain will actually cover all those costs. We're requiring nothing from the school district besides a little bit of space and then consent. The families, of course, do need to consent to utilizing this type of telehealth model. But besides that, there'd be no charge to any of the students using the telehealth service. We hope that that'll formally launch when the next school year starts. But we're starting, the ball is rolling right now. And then once the school nurse student telehealth model's ready to go, we hope to add it for community members, so parents, siblings, and be able to tap into this type of telehealth model and scale it or grow it so that other community members can access this type of telehealth service. So telehealth, I guess in this case, the person would have to be at a school location. We are looking to a way to get it an app-based telehealth, but as some of you can imagine, those apps can be very expensive. So we kind of have to be careful on how we approach that, but we're looking into it, right? So just wanted to share that as well. So that would impact pretty much all the schools in the Rose Park area, the Northwest, all of the elementary schools, including the science school if they wanted to jump on that as well. So that's around the telehealth model. And then I'm meeting with a couple other community councils, collecting feedback. And I guess one of the last things I wanted to say is we would love to conduct interviews with patients. And of course, Intermountain has access to those patient records, so we can do that, but also community leaders. You know, Dorothy, I wonder if you'd be open to that, but we'd reach out to a few and maybe do like 15-20-minute interview by phone and go deeper in some of these responses. And there's actually other questions that our research team has. So I guess just as a little bit of a heads up there, but I'll stop talking and would love to hear any questions or comments or concerns from anybody regarding healthcare access in the Rose Park area.
Any quick questions for
I have a
Nathan?
question, Nathan.
Yeah.
So you're mostly just looking at the Rose Park and North Temple Clinic now to make changes, or are you also looking at like Liberty?
So Jessica, that's a good question. Liberty is good to go. We do not intend to make any changes at Liberty. That is actually a very strong clinic for us. It's a full-time clinic, whereas the Rose Park Clinic, some may know, is only open 2 or 3 days a week. And our provider, one of the reasons we're in a little bit of a tricky situation is our healthcare provider at that clinic retired. And we could have hired someone new, but with COVID and reductions in staff, we were a little bit in a tricky spot. And of course, the school being closed too. But
So
yeah,
Jessica. As of right now, technically, they don't have a provider, is what it's looking like.
At Rose Park, yeah. So that's one of our challenges, but we're still looking into that.
Okay.
So if you could, anyone who's interested in having this discussion on healthcare issues, they could put something in the chat. I think Nathan, I've talked to Jessica. I mean, Jessica has extensive public health work. I mean, she has actually gone to homes and visited with them and helped families. I mean, her expertise will be very valuable with this. So we definitely
would love to reach out to you, Jessica, yeah, for maybe a more in-depth interview. I wouldn't conduct it, would be one of my colleagues, but yeah, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you more about that too.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we're hoping to do it within the next 4 weeks. So I do have your email. Dorothy shared that. So I'll definitely put you on the list.
Okay, we'll
Awesome.
talk some more then.
Okay.
But I'm going to go on because I want to make sure that
You're
our
good.
legislators, but if you have a chance, do listen in on our legislative discussion. You may
I'll hang
have
on.
something of interest in. So with that, Senator Escamilla, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, Dorothy.
Okay, so I'm just going to
I'm
turn it over to you. You've got a lot, I'm sure, that you can want to share with us, and we're anxious to hear from you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dorothy. And it's always a pleasure to join our community councils, especially as we prep for a very different legislative session, that's for sure. So I'll start by just, as you probably are aware, and I think some people have mentioned, we are, as of right a couple of hours ago, a decision was made to move all community or citizen involvement on the legislature to virtual. I'm not sure timeline. This obviously came because of the number of information coming to our Capitol Security, which is the Department of Public Safety and the Utah Highway Patrol, have made the decision with the governor and leadership in the state legislature. You know, there are a lot of concerns regarding safety and security, not only, of course, of the public as a whole, also of elected officials. So please be aware that there will be no access to the public. And again, we don't know timelines that may change in the very near future during the session. So at this point, no access, but all communication and interaction to follow meetings and floor time will be virtually, which we've been doing during the pandemic. So we are running a regular legislative session. You probably will see most of us at the Hill working like a regular legislative session. A lot of meetings and processes will happen online, but you'll see most of us there. So budget-wise, I'll start with a budget, and then we can certainly get into some of the legislative priorities. New governor, he presented his budget, I believe, last Friday or Monday, maybe a little bit. I think it was last Friday. A lot of things for the new governor and the lieutenant governor, but I think it's, his budget and some of his statements and speeches he's given, a good indicator, I think, for our community in terms of issues related to equity and justice, specifically police reform, which of course in our community is a top priority. Education, there will be investment on education. And of course, his budget doesn't necessarily mean that's what the budget will look like, as the legislature certainly changes a lot of that, of what the governor presents. That our job is to balance the budget, and we do that every year. I want to just disclose, because I actually probably will be quoted on the news today and some articles. We were talking about homelessness in a conference this morning with Crossroads Urban Center and other issues related to poverty and healthcare access. Then I mentioned $400 million that are going to be, that we were not necessarily looking to have, that are going to now be in our coffers. Those $400 million are considered one-time funding that is coming to our general fund. And the reason why our fiscal analyst office, as we move forward with budgeting, decided to take them as one time. And the reason why I mentioned that is it has some restrictions of what we can do with the funding, is because this money came as kind of like a consequence of the stimulus money. Some of the stimulus checks that we got at 7 months ago obviously came to our economy, and that helped our economy. So a lot of that general fund that is on our sales taxes obviously reflects part of that stimulus funds, and also a lot of the CARES Act money that has come. So obviously that's money that we cannot count as ongoing funding. So be aware that if you see this $400 million extra, again, will be considered a one-time funding. I hope to see more use of those funds related to infrastructure, like to address issues of housing, which of course has a direct correlation to our issue of individuals experiencing homelessness. There are a lot of legislation related to that. I think mostly is related to funding and how we bring some funds Education, we'll see an increase on education. This is part of the commitment made by the legislature on the constitutional amendment that passed. I was the dissent and the no explanation on the voting guide into that a specific amendment. I still have a lot of concerns. I think this year, because of the way we cut a lot of our budget in response to the pandemic, and fortunately, I mean, even with all the terrible things the pandemic has done, not only to our economy, but obviously to our community and human life as a whole, our economy is still strong, but we are heading towards a recession. So right now, you're going to see a very healthy legislature, I think, giving back to what they committed in terms of education. We will monitor that and make sure that every year that commitment is fulfilled, because that was my biggest concern with the constitutional amendment, is shifting that, responsibility of all income taxes going directly to public ed, which in education, K-16, which now has changed under this new structure. So I think this year is going to be a good year for education. I know there was a conversation of the bonus, and I think our school board member, Organista, explained a little bit of what the school board is now, dealing with. You guys saw my statements when that happened and my vote on executive appropriations. So just to explain what happened now, executive appropriations brings what we call the budget that we adopt immediately. That intent language that was brought by the speaker on December, basically what it does is expedites the process for those funds to be deployed so our teachers can get their bonuses. I think there is an understanding and in good faith, both, I want to be positive, but in good faith now that we are moving forward with Salt Lake School District offering a option for parents. The priority has been very clear from the district, and I agree with them that it has to be in a safe way. And obviously vaccination is a requirement in order to make it safe. And so I know they're working through that process. The vaccine and the distribution of vaccination, I'm a little bit frustrated that it hasn't been as smooth as it should have been. And it's all executive branch. I mean, it's always this dissonance between the legislative branch and executive branch, when the executors obviously are the executive branch. So we are, looking into that. Please know there's been a lot of conversations. Remove political affiliation on how we execute on something like this. The pandemic has certainly shown that we still have a lot of pieces and operations and processes to improve. Distribution of vaccines is one of them, and clearly we're struggling. And there is not only relationship between executive branch and legislative branch, but also local governments, private sector, our local hospitals and systems like Intermountain Healthcare and University of Utah, which were the ones that received the first doses of those vaccines. So a lot of that being worked on. Please know you have legislators that are heavily engaged in those conversations, and it's been difficult, and it's a process. We're getting better. We now are seeing more of our 70-year plus individuals getting their vaccines. I believe that the system crashed for Salt Lake County for a couple of hours, and the mayor immediately issued a statement saying that they were working on it. I think it's not working. Teachers, of course, number one priority. So districts are individually also doing that distribution process. A lot of hands in the process, but as legislators, and I know Representative Hollins, which I don't know if she's here, but she will be here. She was being interviewed right now. We are putting some pressures on that, including the safety for our communities during this transition of the presidency and so forth, which you will think it will never impact a local community, but it actually has the potential of being, unfortunately, a situation where there will be some there's expectations for protests and other things. So so education will see a good piece. We are also, in terms of healthcare, of course, the COVID is not over. Even with vaccines, it's not over, and we need to be reminded every day that it's not over. We are still going to be putting a lot of infrastructure investment on on community health workers, which has been a very effective mechanism for our district, at least for my Senate district, on being more proactive and responding and providing, addressing social determinants of health through this process. So you will see our emphasis on making sure we have enough funding to continue to do that. And I think that correlates a little bit with the presentation by Intermountain Healthcare and how we are responding to that. The other piece I just want to address, there will be a lot of police reform legislation. I know Councilmember Rogers mentioned a minute ago that they're obviously keeping an eye, as local government will be definitely impacted by those police reform legislation. There's been a group working for 6 months on this with DPS and all the agencies related to law enforcement. And I think there's some consensus on where we want to see the state moving. Obviously, the devil's in the detail. And I think every legislator of color, you'll see running legislation related to police reform. I am working on one that's very HR related. And the way we follow HR issues or concerns that have been raised in one agency, we see a lot of law enforcement, just individuals moving from one police department to another without history on some of these pieces that could have probably prevented more problems moving forward. So that's the bill I'm working on. I'm also have a bill related to addressing systemic disparities and inequalities and racism in our state government system. That is a little bit more of a tricky bill that we're working on, but keep an eye on that. I do have a bill on food security and creating a blueprint towards addressing food security from a statewide perspective. The pandemic shows that, yeah, there's a lot of good faith out there and a lot of people that want to help, but systemically we don't have something to address food security when we had an emergency, and that created a lot of issues during the pandemic. Another bill I'm working on, which I think Intermountain Healthcare will like, and is we are working at, one of my bills will be addressing seriously universal coverage for children. No kid in our state should be without adequate healthcare coverage. And I know it's a very pricey ticket item, but I believe we're at a point where if we really want to talk about investing in our human capital, our children should be a priority. It's one of the most vulnerable populations in our state. And if we love families in our state, we should invest in healthcare for our kiddos. So that's, it's a big bill, but I'm excited to see a lot of stakeholders coming together and addressing that. I do have a mental health, telehealth bill. That was a committee bill, and I think we should be, it's actually a really good bill. I'm excited to work to make sure that there's enough access to mental health, not only during the pandemic, but the pandemic has increased the need for mental health, and we don't have enough in our state, unfortunately. And so by allowing telehealth as a tool, as long as, standards of care are being met, we can even address issues related to also other providers outside of Utah that can get licensed to our state and make sure that they can practice and serve many of our communities. So those are some of the pieces of legislation I'm working on. I kind of gave an overall of the budget. The budget is going to be, there are going to be some cuts. I mean, realistically, just because we do expect a recession. We also are first time with this new governor, and we have enough information to know that there'll be some changes on agencies, not only about who runs an agency, but potentially restructuring of agencies, whether that looks like bringing agencies together. So 2 or 3 agencies combining. And so that will definitely shift a little bit how we do things in the legislature. With that, I'm open for any questions. And I know Representative Hollins may be already in the call, but
I'm here.
Oh, great. So I'll pass the time to her, and I'm sure we are here to answer any questions, and especially if there are any related to our other elected officials in the different branches of government. Thank you.
Hi, I want to first apologize for being late. I had to go up to the Capitol to discuss security and exactly how it's affecting our colleagues up there, and in particular how it's affecting me. We all know we've been watching what's been happening in DC, and there is a significant threat on our Capitol here. And so I was asked to voice my opinion about what is happening locally and how it's going to impact us. I have been receiving concerns and have been working with individuals in the community who are being targeted for hate. There are individuals in our community who, when they speak out, their email address and their family email address and home address and phone numbers, they've been doxxed. And all of this information is being sent out, and these people are being threatened. And so I've been in conversations with some of the folks in our community about that and how do we close that loophole to make sure that those individuals who do that are held accountable in our community. Nobody should be afraid to speak out, speak their truth of what they believe in because of the threat, because they're going to be threatened by. So that's one of the things that I have been working on. There was legislation that was passed in 2017 around this. And so I've been working with the prosecutor's office to see if there's anything else that could be done. Like I said, to hold individuals accountable. Some of the things that I'm working on this upcoming year, I am going to be running another SRO, Student Resource Officer bill. A couple of years ago, I ran a bill around student resource officers asking for training, cultural training in the school system, with the goal being of reducing the school to prison pipeline. Well, I found out that some of the SROs are not taking this training. And so part of what I'm looking at and been working with CCJJ and law enforcement to make that training mandatory as opposed to saying they may take the training. And so I've been working on that, and you will see a bill with that. I have a meeting tomorrow with the Utah Arts Alliance. They want to do an art and community center here on the west side at 900 West and 100 South, 915 West, 100 South. And they want to do a kind of a performance space, dance studio. They want to put a radio station in there. And so they've approached me about the possibility of asking for funding for that. And so we have a meeting tomorrow. And so after talking to them, I'm probably, if it all pans out and it sounds good and something that's going to benefit the West Side, may look at asking for appropriation to be able to support them in their quest to do that here on the West Side. Like Luz, I have a concern about the shortage of mental health care workers in this state. And I've learned that there's a number of individuals in our state who have graduated with their master's in social work, but they have not been able to pass the test. In particular, I have a constituent who reached out to me, and she graduated with me. And stated that it's been over 10 years and she still has having a difficult time passing that test. And so what I'm doing right now is trying to collect data around who is not passing that test so we can start looking at and studying and see what we can do to provide extra support so we are able to get those people into the mental health field, and also looking at the possibility of creating an alternative path to getting your mental health license. If someone has a license, have been working in the field for 20 years, are we able to create another path for them? This is something Texas has managed to do successfully. And so I'm looking at their model. We're looking at their model. I've been working closely with some local people in the community, but also the University of Utah social work, Dean of Social Work. Been working with him on how to do that. Another bill I'm going to do is doing a resolution around declaring racism a public health crisis in this state. And so this is a bill that is still in process. Many of you probably saw yesterday, I believe it was the Medical Association, they declared this a public health crisis. And so I'm going to be piece of legislation and working with different healthcare providers to draft that to declare that in this state. So those are some of the things I'm working on. I won't waste too much time. I would just want to leave time for questions, any questions that you all may have.
This is Swale. I don't have a question. I just want to say Happy Founders Day, Representative Hollins. I see you wearing your gear.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a comment for the both of you. I was in attendance at the ballpark safety meeting the other night. And one of the things that the Salt Lake's police department kept emphasizing is this year they lost 64 officers either to resignation or retirement. And there is a lot of it, a spike in increase of crime across the communities, and the police are being blamed on a lot of it when their resources have dwindled, and they are doing the best they can. And that I'm just sharing that.
Alan, thank you for going to that meeting. It was that meeting was at the time that we had our board meeting, and I appreciate you covering it for us and getting back to us.
Yeah, I had a chance to, I wasn't able to stay for the entire meeting, but I was able to stay for a little bit part of the meeting. I got invited by Representative Romero. She asked me if I could just kind of sit in on that meeting. So I was able to hear part of what's happening, mostly around what is happening, in particular around the concerns they have around homeless issues, those experiencing homelessness, and they are having the same concerns that we have as far as trying to make sure the community is safe, in particular from those. There are a lot of people who are out there preying, in particularly on this population, but also as we prepare for the summer and what the plan is for the summer. So yeah.
I just want to add to that. I mean, maybe to the comment a little bit. You're absolutely right. I mean, our law enforcement, it's in a situation right now where it's complicated, and I don't think that, you know, even wages, questions about their wages and whether those are fair or not should be addressed. I think a lot of you're going to be happy to see that a lot of those police reform legislation bills are addressing the safety of everyone, right? So how do we, you know, work together so our police officers are safe, as well as our community, as we interact and we continue to address, you know, differences and changes, and there's just a lot of cultural components to it. But I think you'll see that all of these bills will work in collaboration with them, and they've been very proactive. I mean, I give credit to law enforcement; they've been very proactive in being on the forefront, saying we need changes. Clearly, what we're doing is not working, and we need to change. So I'm excited to also see that as part of the conversation. But your point it's a really good point, and we need to take that in consideration, because they are, you know, they're out there risking their lives and every day, and it's a job that's difficult. So thanks for that reminder.
Representative Hollins, I apologize. The chat is set up, I guess, to only go to me, which I realized early on. So I'll work to correct that in future meetings, because I want everyone to be able to ask questions. But there was a question that came through the chat regarding, I think, the passing of tests. So the question is, shouldn't healthcare organizations that need more healthcare workers be paying to help get people to pass the tests?
Should more healthcare workers be paying for people to pass the test?
The healthcare organizations who need the healthcare workers, should they be helping to help paying for people to pass the test?
Part of the issue is not that people are not able to pay for the test. Part of the issue is the test itself. The test itself, and trying to figure out why is it that people cannot pass this test. Some of the suspicion is that the test, it may be biased. It may be biased. And so that is part of the conversation that we are having, but we don't know this for sure until we get the data to see who is passing this test. So I can tell you this, that the University of Utah, the Dean of Social Work, like I say, him and I have had very long conversations about this. And they are looking at what they can do as a school to assure that people are better prepared to pass that test. And so that's what the concern is right now.
This is Alan again. Representative Hollins, is there anything that can do to look at the test itself? Maybe the test needs to be updated, or how old is it? Is it even relevant?
And that is part of the issue that we're having. So the test is administered by ASWB. That's who administered the test.
Representative Hollins, I
Yeah.
hate to interrupt you in that,
Yeah.
but I've only got about 15 minutes here, and we've got the Utah Inland Port Authority.
Okay.
Okay.
All
So what
right.
I'm hoping is, Alan, if you could talk with Representative Hollins about this,
Okay.
and I think maybe Jessica also
Okay.
calling up, because one of our priorities is making sure that our residents have access to good jobs, and there often are obstacles, and this is one that we could maybe help with. So with that, Allison, can you tell me if anybody from the Inland Port Authority is here?
Yeah, Jack Hedge is here.
Jack?
Yes, Dorothy, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing
Good.
fine. Well, thank you for joining with us.
No, thank you for the invitation. We appreciate it. We appreciate being able to come before this group every year and talk about what we're planning to do with the legislation for our coming year.
Okay, well, I wanted you to be able to talk. I know that there's legislation that the Port Authority Board officially endorses, and you'll be working and dealing with. And then, of course, there are things that you are aware of that will be coming up. And
Right.
we'd be interested in hearing from you on all of those and giving us some ideas. And we appreciated your work last year, and we're anxious to hear what you have this year.
Well, I appreciate that, Dorothy, and thank you very much. And also thank you and Richard and others from the community who have agreed to join our community advisory committees and help give us input as we start putting our certain policies and programs together. We appreciate that involvement and that engagement. So thank you for that as well. This year for us actually is not a heavy year. We're not sponsoring or pushing any legislation through at the Inland Port level. If you will, we're taking the session off this year, I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of legislation that's out there that are promoting infrastructure funds, particularly around air quality issues, around vehicle electrification, around alternative fuel tax credits and things like that. And we will be supporting that legislation, but we're not running any port legislation this year. So I think that's one of the things I wanted to point out. There is some really interesting legislation that's coming up around hydrogen as a fuel. So alternative fuel or tax credits around that alternative fuel, trying to develop the infrastructure to support the deployment of hydrogen as an alternative fuel, and as well as incentives for helping defray the cost of hydrogen fuel cell powered equipment and those kinds of things. And we're supporting that. Rocky Mountain Power and the Aspire Center at USU are running trying to get some legislative support for electrification and expanding the Aspire program. We are supporting that legislation with them, and because we think electrification of heavy equipment in the inland port in terms of cargo movement, in terms of the handling cranes, the lift trucks, those kinds of things, is an important piece of the puzzle to decarbonize logistics, things like that. So we'll be supporting that. But really the only thing we're going to the legislature with as the Port Authority is just our annual operating budget and some one-time funding to actually help support some of those other programs. So if those programs get funded, we hope we'll get some additional funds so that we can invest alongside them and in a matching funds sort of way. That's really where we are for the year. It's a pretty low volume year for us this year.
Jack, you want to give a little bit of more detail about these one-time funds and the programs? I don't think people have a sense of what you're really talking about.
Well, it's one-time funds that would be matched with if Rocky Mountain Power and Aspire, for example, are able to get some funding from the legislature. We would hopefully get some funding as well to participate in and invest in those projects to electrify electric charging infrastructure for heavy duty equipment, trucking, that kind of thing in the inland port. So that's one of the primary things that we would be looking at. The other things are tax credits and tax incentives that we're simply supporting those legislative efforts.
Anything on the second railroad, that Sitla, on the Sitla property, or any bonding for that? I mean, those are all really big issues, but there hasn't been a lot of discussion on.
We don't see, there has been some discussion about, you know, what rail access into the north of I-80 would look like. You know, if we can, the more cargo that can move by rail, you eliminate trucks, you take trucks off the road. But we're not planning to do a second rail yard. There's no market demand for a second rail yard on that property. You know, that property is owned by Sitla. Sitla may be looking at doing something on that property. I know that they're looking at trying to get some funding to clean that property up so that they can develop it. But that's not something that we're involved with. I will say though, Dorothy, we are going to engage a rail consultant and do sort of a rail strategic plan around rail statewide, including the area out here, how we can better utilize rail and deconflict rail in a lot of areas like grade crossings and things like that, how we can reroute and reutilize rail in those efforts. But that's a study that will be done with consultants. Hopefully we'll have enough funding this year from the legislature. We'll be able to do that in the next fiscal year. But that's the only rail plan that we have going on right now.
Some other questions for Jack and for his, yeah, you know, we are going to be working on a traffic study on 2200 West, Jack, and with Salt Lake City, and lots and lots of concerns about truck traffic in the area. I know you've addressed those concerns, and we're kind of following that up with the city, and we will talk with you about that.
Yeah, we actually spoke with the city last week with Rachel Otto and Vicki Bennett about the traffic study work that we had done as part of our strategic planning process, where we used the MOVES model to analyze traffic impacts, which is the same model Wasatch Front Regional Council uses, as well as then we truth tested it against the California Air Resources Board model. That study and those technical papers are part of our strategic business plan, which is posted on our website at www.inlandportauthority.utah.gov. So anybody can take a look at those and look at those things. And we gave them copies of those as well, walked through those things with them and our consultants. And you know, if there's a role for us to play in that traffic study, you know, we're ready to in any way we can in that regard. I will tell you the other thing that we are doing is we also have put together a group jointly with Salt Lake City to look at stormwater best practices. As Salt Lake City is looking to develop a stormwater master plan, looking at stormwater best practices around the country, frankly around the world, and see what we can do to lessen the impacts of development in the inland port jurisdictional area. The city would, the idea is that as these things are developed, the city would incorporate those into their permitting processes and come up with maybe different stormwater management programs for those areas that are more sensitive than maybe in some other areas around the city. And so we're working on that with Salt Lake City as well. So a lot of engagement going on, a lot of things. We're making a lot of progress on a lot of our strategic initiatives around sustainability and around equity. But again, we don't have a whole lot of legislation going this year, Dorothy. So wish I had more to tell you.
Any other questions? Joel, you there?
Yep, I'm there. I'm the school board member on Salt Lake City, and I'm going to be the liaison on the school board with the Inland Port Authority board. So just I'll be seeing more meetings with you, and you'll get to know me.
That's good, Noel. I look forward to getting to know you, and as soon as we can get together face to face, I look forward to doing that.
Yeah, and I do live
Please,
here. I do live in West
anytime.
Point. Yeah, I live in West Point. I always tell people that if I go on my roof, I can see where they will build it in Port from where my house is.
You know, let's get. I'll get together anytime you're available. Let's get together. I look forward to getting to know you and working with you.
Yeah, Joel, we're more than willing to educate you on the inland port and get you up to speed on what's going on and the things that, you know, really the creative things that Jack has been able to do is unreal. With the, you know, the agreements with Rocky Mountain Power and with Dominion Energy. So the things that he's been able to do in the are really, they haven't been touted and they should be. So I want to be there, Jack, to make sure that you give Joel the real story. All right.
All right, James. Thank you.
Jack, bring money. You remember, right? You know what I'm talking about. You have all of our school money. So if you bring a little bit of it with, it would, you know, help us feel better.
Yeah, I understand that.
I know you do.
But actually, we do think that there are things that we can do with the school district to enhance programs in schools, in the communities, and do some of those things. I look forward to discussing those with you, Noel, and seeing if we can't try to put some of those things in place.
So with that, I said that thank you so much, Jack. I know
Thank you, Dorothy.
Glad that you came. I said that I wanted to make sure that we had a public comment period before the meeting ended. And you know, I think that's really important that we actually start having the community at large kind of raise the issues that you want us to be talking about during the rest of this year, and some of the concerns. So I want to open that up before we enact. Come on, you guys, you have to do this, because if we don't, we're not going to get practice doing this.
Well, Jack bowed out, but I was going to tell him I was happy to hear about the hydrogen power, looking into that. That's a unique field, and it's been slow in coming.
Yeah, it's going to be rapid fast, I think now. There's apparently a couple opportunities in legislation for it to happen. So, yeah, I'm with you. All along I-15 and I-80 would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Some other comments? So James, do you have anything you want to tell us?
I don't know.
I don't know. It seems that your term is coming up pretty soon.
It is.
And that. So do you have anything you want to tell us?
Oh, no, I'm not seeking re-election, if that's what we're going to. No, I have always said 2 terms, and that would be it. So if it's something that you're interested in or you've thought of, it's absolutely nothing that you've ever really thought it would really be. So, you know, if you have the time and you want to do it, it's absolutely something you should do. It's been a great opportunity, a lot of highs, a lot of lows, but you know, it's great representing District 1. I hate to say it, we're the district that has the most going on, you know, with everything that within the airport, within, you know, the inland port, the Northwest Quadrant. You look at the public market, you know, you look at the tax increment that we did, you know, there's a lot of great things that I can see when you go back and look at the timeline that have come over the past 7 years. So this is the last 12 months I've got. I'm going to hit it hard. You know, I'm really excited about the public market. I'm grateful that, you know, it's been a slow roll project. Dorothy's been with me the whole time on that. When I first started talking about it, having to fight 6 other council members to help understand, you know, this is the best place for actual public market. and then seeing it go from a 6-1 to a 5-2 to a 4-3, you know, and then it just keeps on crawling up and up and up till we have the support of the mayor and everybody that's involved with it. So that's been a lot of fun. So, you know, I could go on and on and on and on about it, but I still have 12 months. I'm not dead yet.
Well, we are planning our August night out, which happens to be 3 days before the primary election. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll all be there. They need to be there, right? So.
Some other comments, questions? So with that, because I'm always, it is now 8:30. One for being here today. It was very productive. I mean, it was the type of thing that as a community, we've come a long way. And when I get really depressed watching what's going on with our country, I try to remember how much as a community we've accomplished in the last few years. And Steve, I see you're still there. I'm going to call CAP to get a little bit more information about giving donations, and I'll try to get it to you. Because I think, you know, there are some other people are going to be interested about the same questions you had.
Okay, thank you.
So if you'll, I'm not sure I have your email. Did I email you an agenda?
No, you did not. But April has it.
Okay, I'll talk with April.
Or I can get it to you. I'll send it to you. I'll find you.
So just put on the chat and Allison will get it. But I'll get you that information. I think that'll be, I think the Westpointe board probably is going to be looking at that issue also. So good question. So with that, thank you so very much.